This Pechakucha will formulate as a starter in what is concerned a menu for my experience surrounding live art. It aims to cover my approach to tasks throughout the process. During my introduction to live art, I was tasked with drinking water, since live artists, quote, blur the boundaries between art and life by using everyday materials, end quote. The task was to repeatedly sip water from a glass, which didn't resonate with me at all. The importance of everyday materials was lost. Instead, I became more concerned with the time frame provided. I tend to embrace end gaining in my own life. I concern myself with the result rather than the process. There was only 10 minutes for the task, and the process felt stunted by assigning such a time frame. To understand that in live art, quote, happenings have no plot or storyline but are merely an event, end quote, so I began exploring works which focused on liveness and presence. Live artist Marina Abramovich's piece, The Artist is Present, consisted of us sitting in silence for 736 hours while spectators were invited to sit opposite. From this, I felt inclined to consider the relationship between live art and the living. The piece concerned itself less with plot and instead with just existing. I tasked myself with walking from my front door to the station. I didn't concern myself with the end achievement, in this case entering the station, because as soon as I arrived, I walked back to my front door. I thought about just existing in the mundane. At the end of my time, I was halfway home and I found myself becoming okay with the idea of incompletion. I felt a desire to explore the process alone, even though my task progressed without a satisfying end. It made me consider life itself and its monotonous nature. Time was essential in helping me comprehend live art in more ways than one. After all, quote, time-based art was also used alongside the term live art during the mid-1980s to designate a more capacious and forward-looking field of practice, end quote. The statement had me consider how the art form becomes a living organism rather than a static being. It is staged as a passing through time and thus the creation of liminal space, a term which depicts a transition period both metaphorically and physically. Michael Landy's breakdown was particularly influential for my comprehension. When I first viewed this, I felt guilty for witnessing something I wasn't in immediate relation to. I was viewing the aftermath of destruction, whereas now I understand it as depicting a moment of transition from my experience of what caters to the in-between space. Landy himself referred to his work as, quote, witnessing my own death, end quote, which perfectly embodies liminality. I continue to honour the concept of liminal space in relation to live art and my own practice. Quote, when you're looking at two things, don't look at them, look between them, end quote. At this point, I was still struggling to understand that in live art there is a result, but it's not considered until it's reached. I tasked myself with turning the microwave on and letting it run without anything inside. Essentially, I was anticipating nothing. As we progressed further into the live art sessions, I became concerned with symbolism. I found the pedagogy surrounding ritualistic practices successfully developed my understanding of the performative. As a preparatory task, we were asked to find a totemic object. I selected a plaster. At that moment, I was in the process of healing, so the object resonated strongly with me. I considered what this symbolism would convey if I was to concern myself with unadorned presence. I thought about how, quote, we can place contemporary ritualism in a wider framework of human evolution, end quote. I considered the possibilities symbolism provides where explicit narrative cannot. I was reminded of the time clock piece by Teshin Hish and how the art surrounding itself was a singular prop. The symbolism of time could represent determination, but equally suffering. Live art is more than just a narrative. Design choices allow for the audience to interpret the piece how they choose, and so it becomes more personal to everyone.